Sonic the Hedgehog has turned golden, turned dark, turned into a werewolf, turned into a knight, and turned into an evil version of himself that tried to destroy the planet he normally saves. Some transformations are powered by emeralds, some by grief, and one by the sheer narrative audacity of a children's franchise deciding its mascot should carry a sword. Here is every single one explained. Supersonic. 7 emeralds and the Hedgehog becomes a god. Supersonic is the franchise's foundational transformation, the golden form that has defined the ceiling of Sonic's power since its debut in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in 1992. The requirements are absolute. All 7 Chaos Emeralds must be collected, 50 rings must be held. And the activation converts Sonic's blue quills to gold, surrounds his body with a radiating energy aura, and grants flight, invulnerability, and a speed increase that makes his already fastest character in gaming Velocity feel like he was holding back the entire time. The visual design is a deliberate reference to the Super Saiyan transformation from Dragon Ball Z, a connection that Yuji Naka has acknowledged and that the franchise has never attempted to disguise because the reference works too well to be subtle about. The golden quills, the upward-pointing hair, the radiating aura, the power surge triggered by emotional intensity rather than mechanical process. Supersonic is Dragon Ball's most successful piece of cross-cultural influence in gaming, and the franchise's willingness to wear the reference openly is part of why the transformation has maintained its impact across 3 decades. Supersonic's invulnerability is near absolute during gameplay. Enemies, hazards, spikes, bottomless pits, everything the game uses to threaten the player is neutralized by the Golden Form's defensive properties. The ring timer is the only constraint, a steady drain of approximately 1 ring per second that converts the player's accumulated currency into transformation fuel, creating a power fantasy whose duration is measured not in health but in wealth. The timer is the franchise's most elegant design decision because it makes Supersonic simultaneously unlimited and finite, a god whose divinity expires when the rings run out and whose mortality returns with the same blue quills the player started with. Supersonic's narrative role has evolved across the franchise's history from a secret reward to a story requirement. In the Genesis era, Supersonic was optional, a hidden form unlocked through the collection of emeralds that most players never found. By Sonic Adventure, Supersonic was mandatory, the form required to defeat the final boss because the final boss was designed at a power level that only the golden form could match. The shift from optional to mandatory changed what Supersonic means. The Genesis Supersonic was a trophy. The modern Supersonic is a tool, and the tool is so essential that the franchise has built every final boss encounter since Adventure around the assumption that the player will have access to it. Hypersonic. He exists once. He has never returned, and his absence is the loudest piece of power scaling restraint the franchise has ever exercised. Hypersonic appears exclusively in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the 1994 lock-on cartridge combination that merges Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles into a single continuous game with an expanded special stage system. Where standard Chaos Emeralds unlock Supersonic, the Super Emeralds, enhanced versions of the Chaos Emeralds accessed through special stages that only exist in the combined game unlock Hypersonic, a transformation that exceeds Supersonic's capabilities in every dimension the game can measure. Hypersonic's visual design is a strobe. His body flashes through every color in the spectrum, cycling between red, blue, green, yellow, white, and pink in a rapid-fire pattern that communicates instability and excess simultaneously. The effect is deliberately overwhelming, a character whose appearance on screen is so visually aggressive that the player's eyes struggle to settle on a single color before the next one replaces it. Hypersonic retains all of Supersonic's abilities, invulnerability, flight, enhanced speed, and adds a screen-clearing flash attack activated by performing a double jump. The flash destroys every enemy visible on the screen, not some enemies, not enemies within a radius. Every enemy the camera can see, eliminated in a single input that transforms the player from a character navigating a level into a force erasing the level's obstacles through the act of existing in the level's space. Hypersonic has never appeared in any subsequent Sonic game. The Super Emeralds have never been referenced outside of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and the franchise's refusal to bring either back is almost certainly a power-scaling decision whose logic is straightforward. Supersonic is already the franchise's ceiling for playable power in every game he appears in. Hypersonic exceeds that ceiling by a margin so dramatic that including him in any subsequent game would require either depowering him, which betrays the transformation's original promise, or designing enemies capable of threatening a character whose passive ability is the instantaneous destruction of everything on screen. The franchise chose a third option. It chose to pretend Hypersonic never happened, and 31 years of silence is the strongest argument for how dangerous the transformation was. If you're enjoying this so far, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment with the Sonic transformation you think should come back. Let us get back into it. Dark Sonic. He appears for 45 seconds, he nearly kills 2 people, and the franchise has never let him return because 45 seconds was already too much. Dark Sonic is a transformation triggered by extreme negative emotion, specifically the rage Sonic experiences in episode 67 of the Sonic X anime when he witnesses the Metarex torturing 2 of Cosmo's fellow Seedrons. The transformation is not powered by Chaos Emeralds, it is powered by Fury, a dark energy that inverts Sonic's usual blue into a deep black, sharpens his quills into angular blades, and replaces his characteristic confidence with a cold, silent violence that bears no resemblance to the character the audience has spent 66 episodes watching. Dark Sonic attacks the Metarex with a speed and brutality that exceeds anything he has demonstrated in any other episode of the series. His movements are depicted not as visible actions, but as displaced air. The animation choosing to show the aftermath of his strikes rather than the strikes themselves, because the speed at which Dark Sonic operates is too fast for the show's frame rate to depict directly. The Metarex are destroyed instantly, not defeated. Destroyed. And the distinction between defeat and destruction is the line that Dark Sonic crosses and that the franchise immediately pulls him back behind. The transformation lasts seconds. Sonic reverts to his base form as the rage subsides and neither the show nor any subsequent Sonic media references the form again. Dark Sonic's brevity is what makes him significant. The franchise showed the audience what Sonic looks like without his moral restraint, demonstrated the level of violence a Sonic without kindness is capable of, and then immediately ended the demonstration because the demonstration's continuation would require the franchise to become something it is not. Darkspine Sonic. 3 world rings, 3 negative emotions, and a dead friend produced the franchise's most artistically ambitious transformation. Darkspine Sonic appears in Sonic and the Secret Rings, a 2007 Wii game set inside the world of the Arabian Nights, and his power source is grief rather than gemstones. Shahra, the genie of the ring who serves as Sonic's companion throughout the game, is killed by the villain Erazor Jin during the climactic confrontation. Her death releases 3 of the 7 world rings, specifically the rings of sadness, rage, and hatred, and Sonic absorbs them involuntarily as the emotions they represent overwhelm his capacity to contain them. The transformation strips Sonic's body of its iconic blue. Darkspine Sonic is rendered in deep indigo purple with white stripes across his quills and arms, a color scheme that communicates bruised emotion, a character whose visual identity has been altered by pain rather than power. His eyes lose their pupils entirely, replaced by blank white surfaces that remove the expressiveness the franchise uses to communicate Sonic's personality. The blank eyes are the design's most effective detail because they create a Sonic who cannot be read, whose emotional state is communicated through actions rather than expressions, and whose actions are driven by the 3 darkest emotions the franchise has ever channeled through its protagonist. Darkspine Sonic can manipulate the properties of the world around him. Within the Arabian Nights reality, he can slow time, redirect projectiles, and warp the spatial dimensions of the environment. His final battle against Alf Layla Wa Layla, the monstrous form Erazor Jin assumes after absorbing the remaining world rings, requires Sonic to use these reality-warping abilities to counter a villain who has achieved near omnipotence within the storybook dimension. Darkspine Sonic is the franchise's most emotionally complex transformation because the power source is not abstract cosmic energy. It is feeling, specific and named, sadness and rage and hatred channeled through a character who normally runs on confidence and optimism, and the transformation works because the character is recognizably Sonic in every dimension except the one that matters most. His joy is gone, and what remains in its absence is powerful enough to defeat a god. Excalibur Sonic. The sword pulled him, not the other way around. Excalibur Sonic appears in Sonic and the Black Knight, the 2009 Wii game set inside the world of Arthurian legend, and his transformation is unique in the franchise because it is bestowed rather than achieved. Sonic does not collect emeralds, he does not absorb negative emotions, he does not channel chaos energy through a biological system designed for it. The 4 sacred swords carried by the Knights of the Round Table throughout the game merge into Excalibur, the legendary blade, and Excalibur chooses Sonic as its wielder, encasing him in golden armor that covers his entire body from head to quill tip and granting him combat capabilities that exceed anything the game's previous encounters prepared the player for. Excalibur Sonic is the franchise's most visually unrecognizable transformation because the armor replaces Sonic's silhouette entirely. From a distance, Excalibur Sonic does not look like Sonic. He looks like a medieval knight whose proportions happen to include hedgehog quills protruding from the helmet, and the departure from Sonic's iconic visual identity is so complete that the transformation feels less like a power-up and more like a costume change that brought its own character with it. Excalibur Sonic fights with the sword rather than with speed, his combat style adapted to the Arthurian framework in a way that trades the franchise's signature velocity for the weight and precision of blade combat. The storybook series was discontinued after Black Knight, and Excalibur Sonic has never returned in any subsequent game, which makes it the franchise's most geographically locked transformation, a form that exists only inside a storybook dimension that the franchise walked away from. Sonic the Werehog. The franchise took away Sonic's speed and replaced it with stretchy arms, and the replacement nearly broke the franchise. The Werehog is Sonic's most controversial transformation, a hulking, feral, stretch-armed version of the character that appears at night during Sonic Unleashed after dark, Gaia's energy corrupts Sonic's body during the game's opening cinematic. The transformation is involuntary. When the sun sets, Sonic's body expands, his limbs elongate to cartoonish proportions, his teeth sharpen into fangs, and his personality shifts from confident speedster to growling beast whose combat style is built around grappling, slamming, and combo-based melee attacks that root the player in place for animation sequences, whose priority locks prevent movement until the combo completes. The Werehog stages are slow, deliberately, punitively, architecturally slow. The level design funnels Sonic through corridors, across platforms, and through combat arenas whose geometry is designed for a brawler rather than a speedster, and the transition from the day stage's euphoric boost mechanic running to the night stage's plodding melee combat is the most jarring tonal shift any single Sonic game has ever produced. The Werehog stages are approximately twice as long as the day stages, which means the majority of Sonic Unleashed's runtime is spent playing as a character whose primary attribute is the absence of the one thing the audience purchased the game to experience. Chip, the amnesiac companion character who travels with Sonic throughout Unleashed, provides narrative context for the transformation by revealing that Dark Gaia's energy corrupted Sonic's body because Sonic absorbed the entity's power during the opening sequence when Eggman cracked the planet apart. The Werehog is not a separate entity possessing Sonic. It is Sonic's body responding to an alien energy that his biology was never designed to process, and the stretchy arms, the fangs, the enhanced strength, all of it is Dark Gaia's influence expressing itself through Sonic's transformed physiology. Fleetway Supersonic. The British comics turned the golden form into a monster, and the monster is the franchise's most radical reinterpretation of a core gameplay mechanic. In Sonic the Comic, published by Fleetway Editions from 1993 to 2002, Supersonic is not a power-up. He is a personality, a separate entity, that emerges when Sonic absorbs too much chaos energy, and whose arrival replaces Sonic's heroic consciousness with a psychotic intelligence whose only desire is destruction. Fleetway Supersonic has the same golden quills, the same radiating aura, the same physical appearance as the game's reward transformation. But his eyes are different. They are drawn with a sharpness that transforms the familiar Supersonic face into something predatory, and his permanent grin communicates malice rather than the confidence that the game's golden form projects. Fleetway Supersonic does not protect. He attacks. He does not distinguish between enemies and allies. He targets everything in his vicinity with an enthusiasm that makes Eggman look restrained. And the transformation from hero to monster is depicted as an involuntary seizure, Sonic's personality overwhelmed by the golden entity in a process that the comic frames as possession rather than empowerment. The British comics' decision to make Supersonic evil is the franchise's most radical interpretation of a core mechanic because it converts the reward that every game trains the player to earn into a punishment whose activation threatens the hero as much as the villain. Fleetway Supersonic eventually separates from Sonic entirely, becoming an independent character whose arc across the comic's later issues produces genuine pathos. Separated from Sonic, the golden entity develops a conscience, a slow awakening of moral awareness that conflicts with his destructive nature, and produces a character whose internal struggle between what he is and what he is becoming is more compelling than the hero he was originally designed to threaten. Ultrasonic. The Archie comics push Supersonic past gold and into something the games never attempted. Ultrasonic is a transformation exclusive to the Archie Comics Sonic continuity, achieved when Sonic is exposed to a massive concentration of chaos energy that exceeds what the 7 Chaos Emeralds alone can provide. The specific mechanism involves Sonic channeling power from a billion power rings simultaneously, a feat made possible through the unique properties of the Archie continuity's Chaos Force, a dimension of pure chaos energy that the comics establish as the source of all chaos-based powers in their universe. Ultrasonic's visual design varies across his appearances, but consistently depicts a Sonic whose quills and body radiate with a golden white energy more intense than Supersonic's standard gold, and whose abilities exceed the golden form's capabilities by adding environmental manipulation to the standard flight speed invulnerability package. Ultrasonic can manipulate matter at the molecular level, rearranging physical substances into new configurations through direct application of chaos energy. The transformation is depicted as difficult to sustain even by supersonic standards, its energy requirements draining Sonic's reserves faster than the standard golden form, and imposing a time limit that is measured in seconds rather than the ring-based minutes that Supersonic typically enjoys. Environment transformations. The Archie comics gave Sonic elemental forms, and each one turned him into a different kind of natural disaster. Solar Sonic, Ecosonic, and Polar Sonic are environment-specific transformations exclusive to the Archie comics continuity, each one achieved by channeling a billion power rings through a different elemental medium. Solar Sonic channels chaos energy through solar radiation, transforming Sonic into a being of concentrated thermal energy, whose body radiates heat at stellar temperatures and whose speed generates friction-based fire along every surface he contacts. Ecosonic channels chaos energy through natural plant life, transforming Sonic into a nature entity whose body is composed of living vegetation and whose abilities include accelerated plant growth, photosynthetic energy absorption, and the manipulation of organic matter across an area measured in miles rather than meters. Polar Sonic channels chaos energy through Arctic conditions, transforming Sonic into a cryogenic entity whose body generates cold at temperatures approaching absolute zero and whose movement flash freezes everything in his wake. Each environment transformation is situation-specific, activated only in the presence of the corresponding elemental medium, and each one trades the versatility of Supersonic's general-purpose power set for a specialized capability that exceeds the Golden Form's output within its specific domain. Solar Sonic generates more heat than Supersonic. Ecosonic manipulates more biological matter. Polar Sonic produces more cold, but none of them can do what Supersonic does across all domains simultaneously, which makes them tactical variants rather than upgrades. Sonic Frontier's cyber corruption. The island infected him, and the infection looked like the franchise finally addressing what happens when Sonic cannot outrun the problem. Sonic Frontiers introduces a visual corruption effect that manifests across Sonic's body during his time on the Starfall Islands, cyan digital lines and geometric patterns spreading across his quills and limbs as the cyberspace dimension's influence bleeds into his physical form. The corruption is not a transformation in the traditional sense, it is a degradation, a slow overwriting of Sonic's physical body by the digital architecture of an ancient civilization whose technology operates on principles that organic biology was never designed to interface with. The corruption progresses across the game's runtime, the cyan patterns spreading further with each interaction Sonic has with the cyberspace portals, and the visual effect communicates something the franchise has rarely acknowledged. Sonic is vulnerable, not to enemies, not to bosses. To the environment itself, a world whose fundamental operating system is incompatible with the character inside it, and whose influence cannot be resisted through speed because the infection travels at the speed of data rather than the speed of sound. The corruption is ultimately resolved through the game's narrative, Sonic purging the digital infection through Chaos Emerald energy, but the visual of a corrupted Sonic, his iconic blue streaked with alien geometry, is the franchise's most effective piece of body horror because it turns the character's design, the most recognizable silhouette in gaming, into something wrong. Supersonic 2. Sonic Frontier's final update gave the Golden Form an evolution it had not received in 31 years, and the evolution was designed to kill the player. The Final Horizon DLC for Sonic Frontiers introduces what the community calls Supersonic 2, an enhanced version of the Golden Form achieved during the battle against the End, the game's true final boss, whose power level exceeds anything a standard Supersonic can address. The visual design adds prominent blue highlights to Supersonic's golden quills, creating a two-toned effect that distinguished the form from every previous Supersonic appearance. The quills are sharper, the aura is more intense. The overall impression is a Supersonic that has been pushed past its normal operating parameters into a state the transformation was never designed to sustain, And the gameplay reflects this by making the final boss encounter one of the most mechanically demanding sequences in franchise history. The player must execute precise parries, timed dodges, and sustained offensive combos against a boss whose attack patterns require frame-perfect responses, and the difficulty is so severe that the encounter reportedly required multiple patches to adjust its balance after launch. Supersonic 2 is the franchise's most recent answer to the power scaling question that Hypersonic left unanswered 30 years ago. What comes after Supersonic? The answer is not a new color or a new form. It is the same gold pushed harder, the same transformation under more pressure, the same power ceiling tested by a threat so extreme that the ceiling cracks and what comes through the crack is blue. Movie, Supersonic. The Paramount films made the golden form a climax rather than a reward, and the translation from gameplay mechanic to cinematic event changed what Supersonic communicates. Movie Supersonic appears at the end of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 when Sonic absorbs the power of the Master Emerald during the battle against Robotnik's giant Eggman robot. And the transformation sequence is the film franchise's most visually spectacular moment. Sonic's quills rising and turning gold while the camera pulls back to show the energy surge radiating outward across the landscape. Movie Supersonic's power set matches the game version, flight, invulnerability, and enhanced energy projection, but the film adds a detail the games never explicitly depict: the emotional cost. Ben Schwartz's vocal performance during and after the transformation communicates that Supersonic is overwhelming rather than empowering, a power level that the 15-year-old hedgehog inside the golden shell is barely controlling and whose magnitude frightens him as much as it frightens the villain. The third film adds Super Shadow to the equation, and the climactic battle between Supersonic and a powered-up villain produces the franchise's most destructive cinematic sequence, entire city blocks reduced to rubble by the energy output of two beings whose power operates at a scale that urban geography cannot survive. Titan. Supersonic. Sonic Frontiers placed the golden form inside a giant robot, and the combination produced the franchise's most visually unprecedented combat sequence. The Titan battles in Sonic Frontiers are the first encounters in franchise history where Supersonic fights enemies that dwarf him in scale, ancient mechanical guardians called Titans whose size makes Supersonic, normally the most powerful form in any game he appears in, look small. The solution is fusion. Supersonic enters the Titan's body after defeating it, merging with its mechanical systems and piloting the colossal frame as a supersonic-powered mecha, his golden energy radiating through the Titan's joints and circuits as the machine's own combat capabilities are amplified by the Chaos Emerald energy flowing through its pilot. The Titan battles are fought as kaiju-scale encounters, Supersonic inside a 100-foot mechanical body trading blows with other Titans across landscapes that crumble under the footsteps, and the camera's insistence on pulling back to show the full scale of the combatants makes Supersonic's golden glow a tiny point of light inside a continent-sized conflict. The Titan fusion is the franchise's most ambitious Supersonic application because it redefines what the golden form can do. Previous games treated Supersonic as the ceiling. Frontiers treats Supersonic as a battery, a power source that can be inserted into other systems to amplify their capability, and the implication that Supersonic's energy is transferable rather than personal opens a mechanical design space that the franchise has only begun to explore. And that is every transformation Sonic the Hedgehog has undergone across 34 years of games, comics, cartoons, and films. The pattern underneath all of them is the same tension the franchise has never resolved and never wants to, because the tension is the engine. Sonic's transformations are about exceeding limits, but the character is defined by not having limits. He is already the fastest thing alive. He already defeats every enemy the franchise places in front of him. He already wins every time, in every medium, through speed alone. So what does a transformation give a character who already has everything? The answer changes with every form. Supersonic gives him divinity, Hypersonic gives him omnipotence, Darksonic gives him rage, Darkspine gives him grief, the Werehog gives him strength he did not ask for, and Fleetway gives him a version of himself that proves the golden form is not inherently heroic. It is inherently powerful, and powerful is not the same thing as good. Every transformation on this list is a test, not of Sonic's power, of his identity. The emeralds can make him a god. The world rings can make him a warrior. Dark Gaia can make him a monster. And the question every transformation asks is the same question every Sonic game asks. When you take away the blue, when you replace the speed with something else, when you give him power that does not feel like his, is the person inside the transformation still Sonic? 34 years of evidence says yes, the Hedgehog survives every color, the Speed survives every form, and the person inside the gold, the purple, the black, the armor, and the fur is always in every timeline, in every dimension, and every medium the franchise has ever explored. The same kid who started running in 1991 and has never found a reason to stop.